Hi there, I'm Linda and this is Huttons Valley Permaculture. Well, it happens every year. My polytunnel gets really overgrown and it's time to get in there and give it a clean up. I've got some overwintered peppers that have been in the ground and they need a bit of space. I've also overwintered a pepper that I dug up from the garden and moved in here for the winter. Let's go and check out how that's going and we'll have a look at everything else. Well, it's so hot in here, which is pretty much why all my Swiss chard are starting to flower and go to seed. But it's also why a lot of my peppers are starting to reshoot. So before I get in here and do the cleanup, I thought I'd just show you what's happening right now. I've got this huge Swiss chard that's starting to fall over. It'd be going past the roof if it could. I don't need all of these seeds in this space. In fact, I don't need Swiss chard in here really at all. I do grow it in here over winter just so I can feed it to the chickens, but I've really found that I've got enough in other areas of my garden so that if this doesn't come back on its own, I'm not too worried about that. At the moment, I don't have many seedlings in here as yet. These ones are Lucina trees, which I will be moving outside shortly to harden off. I do have some elderberry that I'll be planting out in my swales shortly. But the other seedlings that I had in this space, I've just moved out. It's a lovely warm day today, and I've got them out in my nursery area. I've recently potted up some ginger and some turmeric. The turmeric was actually one that I grew last season and I've separated that into 4 pots to hopefully give me a bit more of a harvest this season. I do have various things in pots. Here's some kangaroo paw that I am propagating, so I'll be splitting that into individual plants soon. I do have some mint plants, that's some peppermint I've got going, which I need to get into the garden. This here is an orange tree that I had in the ground for 3 years and it didn't grow at all. So I've dug it up and put something else in its place and now it's loving life. It's got some new little shoots coming and lots of flowers and even a little fruit coming. So the lesson is, don't give up on the plants, give them a different environment and maybe they'll just kick back into life. Other things in pots here, this is a choco vine. I got it from a friend of mine, Joe, and it had a lovely huge shoot growing on it, but I promptly broke that when moving it in here. So I've been nurturing it along and we've got a new shoot coming, I'm pleased to say. So once that really gets going, I'll move that outside and then find a home for it in the garden. Just next to it, I've got some strawberries that I've potted up with a view to take to a swap table with my permaculture group. And I've got some rosemary, a bit hard to see in amongst the tea tree that's growing through, which I'll have to cut out. But the rosemary I'm going to move into areas of my swales. And that's just another little kangaroo paw that I can add into the swales as well, just because they're beautiful. So that's most of my potted plants in here. I don't have a lot in here because they're mostly out in my nursery space at the moment because it is warming up. But I do need to get down, this is an old tomato vine. I need to clear out all these Swiss chard and then give some space to these overwintered peppers that I'll be showing you shortly. So I think the first thing we need to do is just clear out some of these containers and pots and things to give some space so I can clear out all of these plants. Well, that's most of the empty pots and rubbish moved out. All I'm going to do is get all the pots with plants in it, just pop it up and out the way here, and then start clearing out these overgrown plants. Well, that just leaves one pot to move. Let's have a look at that. That's our overwintered pepper. Hiding down here below our Swiss chard plant, I dug up this capsicum plant. It's a red pepper that did quite well out in the garden, which is why I selected it to dig up. It's just starting to get the shoots on it. Now it's still a little bit cool to be planting this out, so I'm going to give it a little bit more light so that it can really kick back into life before I get it planted out in the ground again. I also dug up an eggplant to overwinter in the polytunnel, but that didn't survive like this one has. And I didn't do any more plants than this because while I was digging it up, I was disturbing all these worms and soil life, so I felt really bad. I would rather overwinter peppers in the ground in this space already than disturb the soil. The leaves do look like they've had some pest damage on them, so hopefully by moving them out from underneath that Swiss chard, we might give them a bit more light and a bit more space away from the pests. Just tuck it in over there, out of the way. We're going to have a look at the overwintered in-ground peppers soon, but first I've got to create some space and get rid of this Swiss chard that's actually falling over. It's so large and coming out of the ground. We'll move that out and feed it to the chickens. I'll cut it halfway up to start with, just to help prevent it falling on any of the plants I do want to keep. Get that out the way. And then get lower down. Now I'll get the roots out. Right, is that one done? This tea tree just loves to invade spaces, so we'll get rid of all of that. In this corner here, I often have kale plants that come up at this time of year from a plant that grows just here. So I'm going to give it some more space and we'll see if we get some Tuscan kale growing once again. You can see there's a very spindly plant here, but I'm going to just trim all of those off and see if we get any regrowth. Now I do have to be a bit careful around here because I do have some peppers here as well. Okay, that's that corner cleared. Now I did trial overwintering eggplants, but they all seem to die off and none were successful. But just here, you'll see this one is in the ground here and it's got some little shoots down here. But following it along, there's plenty of new growth happening on this plant. So I'm hoping now that we've got some warmth and we've got the light to it now, we can get a lot more growth. You can see it's already got little flowers coming on it. Just over here, next to my old tomato plant, I have a pepper plant. It's actually a chili plant that I overwintered 2 years ago, and this will be its third season growing. I'm not sure how it will go and how long these plants will really last for, but it's already getting some growth on it, although it doesn't look as healthy as that other plant. But I'm going to make sure I've got plenty of water to it, clear out the tomato, and make sure it's got plenty of light and space. This tomato plant produced tomatoes before any of my plants outside produced them, and it's lovely to get that early start on your tomato season. And it was just a volunteer plant. There are just two varieties that I grow in here, the Jean Formé, which is a nice little orange tomato, and the Tigerella. So if it volunteers in here, I know it'll be one of those two. Now I've got to make sure I keep up on with grasses in this area, and also this tea tree, which likes to sneak in everywhere. I think my backyard chickens deserve a bit of love, so this lot's headed to them. Now, while I was cutting out the tomato plant, this branch of this chili plant just snapped off, and having a closer look at some of these branches, it looks like there's some insects living in here. That might be why this plant doesn't look that great. It looks quite wilted and not happy at all. What I might do is just give it a prune down here, sort of below these joints. That's where that one broke off. So I might just prune it here and here. It still leaves a couple of spots where it's got some growing points, but that might give it a better chance to kick in without all this sort of growth on it. So I'm just going to take it off down there and here. So that's a massive prune on this plant, but it is, as I said, the third year, so it just mightn't be able to kind of last that long. But I'll leave it in the ground and just see what happens. There we go. Wow, I think that was a beetroot. Sometimes you kind of forget what's in the ground. That's actually a beetroot. Because it had already gone to seed, it's probably a little bit woody, but I'll take that in the house and check it out anyway. With the Swiss chard all removed in this area, it better reveals my lemongrass plant. In my climate, lemongrass dies in winter outside. Well, that's what I've found anyway, even when I've tried to protect it a bit by putting mulch up high on it. Now this seems to be okay. It might be a little bit rotten in there, but I won't be pulling out any at this point. I'll just see if we can get this plant kicking back into active growth, and then I might be able to harvest some. We're nearly there with the tidy up. It's starting to reveal our overwintered pepper plants. This one here is a chili plant with some small flowers already starting on it. This guy here is a red capsicum. Moving along, now this plant here is a pepper plant, but I don't see any leaf development on it as yet. I might give this one a bit of a harsh prune and see if we can get it happening. Right next to it, again, not a lot of leaf, except for over here, which leads me to believe that it's been preyed upon by pests. So with the clearance of the greenhouse, maybe we'll clear out a few of those pests and give this plant a chance to jump back into life. This is a cayenne pepper. It does have a green appearance sort of down lower on it, but it does look very dry and woody. So again, I'll chop that off low and see how that returns to life or not. And over the back here is a eggplant. I probably should have, before winter hit, really cut that back to give it a chance to come back, but it's definitely dead now. So I'm going to move that out the way, give these all a prune, and get all this grass out of here. All right, well that seems a bit woody and hollowed out. I don't think my cayenne's overwintered. I'll cut it off right near the base and see how that looks. Now this plant's definitely dead, so I'll just remove it all. Oh gosh, that's tough. All right, Now what about you? This plant back here is an Anaheim pepper, and it might have been devoured by the same pest that's been on this red pepper. So I'll just give it a bit of a trim because it's quite green inside, and just see if it'll come back to life. It's all a bit of an experiment, so if it doesn't, well, it doesn't matter. I've got new plants growing already. And down comes the eggplant. Get that one out of there. And now to remove the grass. These plants here, I'm in the process of hardening off. They've had half a day outside. I'll move them out again tomorrow. No reason for these plants to continue inside, but I'll put them outside tomorrow morning and probably start to leave them out there. But I'll keep growing this choco on a little bit longer before I get it outside. Once again, I've reclaimed the polytunnel space. I can see what plants I've already got that might do okay, but I do have seedlings started inside with the peppers and the eggplants, and I will replace some of the ones that did die and start off some new ones where I've got some room. It's just great to be able to walk in here again and have it be a space that you can use. I generally grow a couple of tomatoes in here, so I can get those started in here pretty quick actually. There's lots of volunteers starting in the garden, so it's a sign that I should be able to at least get going here. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Thanks so much for watching, and bye for now.